Okay. So we're holding on a Mishnah on Samachei Amud Beis. On the top of the page, 65b. I think Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. We're learning Shabbat English immediately. And we're learning Lili Nishma Sahavagol the Bas Baruch Binyamin and Nisan Al Zev Ben Zion. And whoever needs to refer Shlema. Okay. Maybe I make a mistake. Yeah, it's not Samachei. We're starting on Samach Daled, 64. No, I'm sorry, 65. Machalei is the Sunday, yeah? 65. 65b. That makes sense?
When I opened, it says 65a, but now I'm thinking.
Oh. Okay. The Mishnah says like this: Machalei es hasada v'naslei mitzvos damim. We have a buyer and a seller. Let's say that Ruvain is selling a field to Shimon. So Shimon does a partial payment, sort of like a down payment for the field. And he says to him, whenever you want to take the field, so pay the rest of the money. That's not allowed. Why is that not allowed? In the down payment, I'll pay the rest later. So the problem over here is that there's one detail that the Mishnah is not saying clearly. The problem is that he's saying that Kanei me'achshav, you're going to acquire it from right now. So he's telling him that it's yours from now. Now what's happening here is that if the problem over here is going to be who's going to eat the fruits. Let's say Ruvain's selling a field to Shimon, and Shimon paid some of the money. The rest of the money he's holding on to. But Ruvain has already given him the whole field. He's only given him the whole field if he ends up paying the rest of it. So what happens now is like this. The fruits, if Ruvain eats the fruits, who's the seller? He eats the fruits that are growing right now. So we would say, well, whose fruits really are they? They're really Shimon's. Because when he comes and pays for it, you're going to see that he acquired it retroactively. It's really Shimon's fruit. Why is Ruvain eating them? Why is the seller eating them? It's because Shimon is giving him interest because Ruvain allowed him to take longer on paying the money. Yeah, so there's interest there. That's if Ruvain's going to eat the fruits. That's if the seller eats the fruits. What happens if Shimon eats the fruits? So then we have another problem. So 1 second, it's his field. Yeah, but let's say he doesn't come through with the sale. He doesn't come through with the sale. That means that the little money, the down payment that Shimon had given to Ruvain has to be returned. If he doesn't pay up the rest, then Ruvain has to give Shimon back the down payment. Now, who ate the fruits during this time? Shimon. So now it's interest from Shimon to Ruvain, from the buyer to the seller, because the down payment, he lent him money, gives him the down payment back, and plus fruits.
At the time of returning the deposit, he would deduct the fruits. Shimon ate, it wouldn't fix it.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting possibility. If you can deduct the fruits, that could resolve the issue. Yeah, very good. We'll see in the Gemara. We just did the first case of the Mishnah on 65b. Second case, Elveo al Sadeo. If he lends him money in the field, is like a collateral. Says, if you pay me back, if you don't pay me back from now until 3 years, then I'm keeping the field. So, then the field is his. And Baitas Benzonim would actually do that according to the sages. Did we have Vitus Benzanim before? We had him last week or something, no? Remember? What did he do?
It was like Thursday or Friday.
I remember it from the bottom of a page somewhere. Yeah. I'm going to review the mice of Vitus Benzanim just as they are Mecher al Pi Rebbe Lezer. Nazariah B'Lekecha Echel Perisaya. Okay, so now we'll see in the Gemara what the issues are. The Gemara starts off with Mi Yochel Peris. In the first case where someone is making a sale and he's only getting part of the money, who's going to eat the fruits in that case? Which we said it wasn't allowed. So it's interesting the Gemara is saying this. Or maybe the Gemara is elaborating on what the issue is. Rav Huna Amar Meicher Eichel Peris. Rav Huna says that the seller eats the fruits. Ravanan Amar Meshalshin less appears. Ravanan says that you put it in a third party, in an escrow account. The Gemara says these two opinions between Rav Huna and Ravanan, they're actually not arguing. They're talking about different cases. When did we say that the seller eats the fruits in our case of this? That would be Reuven. Reuven sells a field to Shimon. Yeah, we're talking about where Shimon pays partially. So why over there does the seller eat the fruits? It's because the Mishnah doesn't. Sorry.
The Mishnah doesn't say anything about like benefiting.
But the Mishnah does say that it's forbidden, right?
It says it's forbidden.
No,
but
so I'm explaining why it's forbidden. Because it's going to be interest from either side. Either it's interest if the sale comes through because it's finished paying up, then it's going to be interest to the whose property is it if the sale comes through? It's the buyer's property, it's Shimon's property. So if Reuven eats the fruits, so then he's getting, because he allowed Shimon extra time, so Shimon is giving him fruits from his property, which is basically interest. Because Shimon owes money to Reuven, and Reuven is eating fruits during that time that he owes him the money. Because of the extra time, which is another word for interest.
I mean, you could say that he's prohibited from eating fruits off of property.
Right.
No longer his anymore.
Right. And if the sale doesn't go through, then Reuven has to give it back to. 1 second. I'm so sorry. Okay, sorry. Let's go back. Still there? Fine. Okay. So now we say that there's no machlokes between these two opinions. When Rav Huna said that the Meichel Peres, that the seller eats the fruits, that's talking about because he says l'chi mais is kani.
This is why the Mishnah outright just says you can't purchase like
Well, yeah, you can't pay. You do the paying later because of the problem with who's eating the fruits. But if he tells them, you're going to see the Gemara is going to elaborate on this detail. There's only one case where it really has this problem. You'll see in a moment. But right here, what we're saying is that if he tells them that when you bring the extra money, when you bring the end money, that's when you're going to acquire it. So the sale wasn't complete. So the seller still eats the fruits. When you bring the money, then the sale will be done. So there's no problem there. It's not that the seller's eating the fruits that belong to the buyer. It was the seller's fruits because the sale wasn't complete until all the money is there.
So if you get a mortgage, partially paying off a home, can you apply to this? Or?
What happens with the mortgage? If you the bank
it's not yours.
the bank paid the seller all the money by a mortgage. All the money's been paid. Only thing is you owe the bank money. Now, if you would be paying what you owe, then there would be no interest there.
There's always interest. I think one of the major differences is that when he buys the home is like on the business. They just put a lien on the title.
Right.
Different than here that stays by.
Problem is that the bank charges you, I think, double the house, right?
No, if you do the payments for 30 years, might be true. Even with low interest. It's more sizes.
You end up paying triple the house. You buy a house for $100,000, you end up paying $300,000. I thought it was just double
over 30
over
years.
30 years.
And it depends. Now with these high interest rates, might be even more.
Oh, okay. Right.
Mostly. And then as it shifts, like halfway through the loan, it flips where more goes to the principal than
Right. So I'm on 65B.
I was wondering, is this the same even if it doesn't have a field? It's just like a house.
Yeah. If it would be a house, then it would be who's living in it, right? Hadi Amar, in the other case where we said that we have to put it in escrow, that's l'chimaisis kani miachshav. The l'chimaisis kani miachshav. That's where he told him that when you bring the money, then retroactively it's going to be yours. Because retroactively it goes back to being the purchasers, which in our case is Shimon. Goes back to being Shimon's. So then when Ruvain is going to eat the fruits, that would be ribbis. And if he doesn't eat the fruits, then if he doesn't eat the fruits and the seller eats the fruits, then if the sale doesn't go through, if the purchaser eats the fruits, and the sale doesn't go through, then it's going to be purchaser eats the fruits. So we let the purchaser eat the fruits. He acquires it from the beginning. If the sale doesn't go through, then the seller has to give the down payment back. What turned out is that he gives them the down payment back plus the fruits. It turns out that the purchaser had given a loan to the seller, and this loan is returned with interest. The down payment plus the fruits. Okay. Tani Rav Safra beribis dvei Rav Chia. Rav Safra learned ribis with the in the yeshiva of Rav Chia. I guess it means with the brises of Rav Chia. And he said like this: Pa'amim, Rav Safra taught, maybe. How do they say taught or learned? Tani means to teach or to learn. Taught. Okay, good. Of Rav Chia. So in that academy of Rav Chia, it says Pa'amim sheshneim mutarim. Sometimes that both can eat the fruits. Both the buyer and the seller. We'll see exactly how that's going to work. There's times when both of them are not allowed to eat the fruits. There's sometimes sometimes the seller is permitted, but the purchaser is forbidden. And there's sometimes where the purchaser is permitted and the seller is prohibited. You know, it usually does this. Rabbi Yomi usually divides cases into four. Yeah, we've had it a few times where Rabbi Yirmiyah says, not even over here. Yeah, we had it on page 35. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Pam Shashneim B'chatas, Pam Shashneim Basham, Pam Shaseicha B'chatas, Vashel Basham. He goes every option he gives you, and basically the four cases. He does it in Sukkah as well, and another Gemara. Sukkah on top of a Sukkah, Rabbi Yirmiyah gives you the four cases. But okay, so here it's a brisa. And on a Rava Basrei, so Rava comes along and responds to this teaching, and he adds in the explanation of how this works, because the explanation isn't given from the brisa. It says, Pamim Sheshneim Mutam, what's the first? Case number 1. Case A. When will both be allowed to eat the produce of this field? Damarlei, because he said to him, Kani, the Reuben tells to Shimon, the seller tells to the purchaser, Kani Kashir Zuzah, acquire the amount of the down payment. So now the purchaser can eat the part that he bought, and the part that he didn't buy, the seller can eat. Yeah, it'll be as if it's being purchased in increments. Okay, case number 2, case B. The retroactive is going to be a problem. That's coming up. Sometimes both of them are forbidden. He says that when you bring all the money, acquire it retroactively from now, everything. That's the real problem. That's the case where we have the real problem, where there's a real case of interest.
Well, when in the case where they're both prohibited, maybe like the sale,
because you can't eat the fruits. Well, the fruits are free anyway.
Well,
anyone can eat the fruits. Yeah. So sometimes the seller is permissible, but the purchaser is forbidden. Here, when he tells him that when you bring the money, then it's going to be yours. Basically, the seller keeps the property until all the money is brought in, until the last installment is paid. It's always the seller. So the seller eats the fruits the whole time. There's no interest there when he eats his own fruits. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes the purchaser is allowed to eat, but the seller is not allowed. He tells him, acquire from now. And the part that you owe is just a loan. So who's allowed to eat the fruits here? The purchaser. They just like that. Yeah. You see, another case, our problem, what we were going through, is that there was always a possibility that maybe he won't finish paying up, and then the sale retroactively is never going to take effect. If that's the case, then the person has to give back the down payment, which means the down payment turns into a loan. And when the seller was eating the fruits, that would be problematic. And if the purchaser was eating the fruits, we had the problem the other way. Maybe the sale goes through, and purchase. No. Yeah, and the seller eats the fruits. If the sale doesn't go through, then that's a problem. Okay, so here what's happening is we're saying that the sale is final. There's no option of backing out of the sale. Only thing is he has a debt. Okay, so now we only have one issue. A debt, the seller cannot eat the fruits when the purchaser has a debt, because then he'd be getting interest. So we say that the seller is not allowed to eat the fruits, but the purchaser is yes allowed to eat the fruits. It's his field, he's eating the fruits, and he just owes money. Okay. And if he doesn't pay, so we'll go in and take property, whatever. How we collect debts? Either call the electric collection.
Are we still looking to see which one of these enumerated?
We just got the last one.
But it hasn't gone into which one we actually passed by.
No, well, it's on each one. We're going to pass them. It looks like by all of them. each one was a different scenario. Man Tanashnei Masurim. Who's the one that says, who could this be that says that both of them are prohibited? That means the case where the meicher can't eat there and the seller can't eat there, and the concern, the seller and the purchaser can't eat the fruits. There was a concern that if the sale goes through, there's a problem. If the sale doesn't go through, there's a problem. So that would be, who's the author of that? Amar Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua says, I can't tell you who the author is, but I can tell you who it's not. It says, like Rabbi Yehuda. It doesn't go like Rabbi Yehuda. Why not? Rabbi Yehuda, if it would be Rabbi Yehuda, Amar, he says, Tzadach b'ribis mutter. If there's one factor, one you have two options. Either it goes like this, either if one of the options has ribis and one of the options doesn't have ribis, Rabbi Yehuda says that's not considered ribis. That's not considered interest. Interest has to be when you're actually paying it, not if you may end up paying it. So because over here, if the sale goes through, then there's not the sale goes through and the seller ate the fruits. That would be ribis. But if the sale doesn't go through, it won't be ribis when the seller eats the fruits because it was his the whole time. So Rabbi Yehuda would say that's not considered interest. This type of ribis, yeah, we had this last week. Samach Gimel. Oh yeah, I thought we called it Tzadach b'ribis.
Oh, maybe that's.
Yeah. Amana.
I remember it was like a different.
Yeah. Okay. Next case of it looks like a case in the Brisa. It's not our Mishnah yet. We didn't get back to our Mishnah yet. Mashkan lay bias, mashkan lay sada, ramalay lekishatirtz and lamaychan lay timker melali. Ruvain lend Shimon money. Shimon has a house. He gives the house as a collateral. He has a field. He gives the field as a collateral. Reuben says, you know something, I know you're going to come back and pay the loan. You'll take it back. But if you do ever decide to sell this, I'd like for you to sell it to me. You know, he likes the collateral. He likes it. Reuben says, if you're going to sell, I want to buy it first. I want the option of buying it. So now, if he says bidamim halalu, if he says for the price of the loan, which is less than the actual market value, he says, if you ever sell this to me, I'd like it for this and this price. So then he's gaining interest on the loan.
When you say collateral, it's
The secure, yeah, the secure.
What's the?
He lent him money,
Oh.
and he's taking the house as a collateral. And he says,
So if you don't pay, then he takes back the house.
yeah, but if he does pay, then if he pays, then he takes the house back. Right?
If he pays, so either way,
He has to return the money. And now he's telling him that I would also like to buy the house at a lower price. There's two pshatim over here, but this is
house is the collateral. So he has to return the home
let's say it's $100, right? The Reuven lends him $100. It's okay. Meanwhile, there's the house that's mortgaged, you know, that's a collateral. So if he doesn't pay, so he's going to come back and pay. But he tells him that, look, if you ever want to sell, I want to be the purchaser.
House is worth only.
Let's say. So the house is probably worth, let's say, 120. And he tells him, I would like to buy it for the 100. If you ever want to sell. So now the lender is getting some interest here because he's getting a better price on the house. We say that's usher. But if it's an actual market price, the house is only worth 100, then it's going to be mutter.
Doesn't seem like ribis.
Well, the fact that he's getting a better price on it. You lend someone money and then you sell him things at a better price than the market value.
Two different places. One is paying back this
Right.
borrowed money, in which case it seems like he's paying back exactly. There's no risk.
Right.
The other thing is like security, it's collateral.
Right.
That's
Yeah. But what you're asking is why is it necessary for this to be a collateral? He doesn't even need a collateral. He can just lend him money and tell him that if you ever sell your house, I would like to buy it at a lesser price.
yeah.
Why is the collateral necessary? I don't know the answer to that, but maybe in the notes there or something. Mantana Madam Halal also. Who's the opinion that would hold that this is going to be prohibited if he tells him that I'd like to purchase it at the lower price? Rabbi Yeshua, like Rabbi Yehuda, it's not the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, right? I can't tell you who it is, but I can tell you it's not. It's not Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, maybe the guy's never going to sell the house. We don't know that there's interest there. It's only interest if he's going to sell the house. If he's going to sell the house, then he has to go through with that deal. Then that would be interest, but we don't know if he's going to sell it, right? Interest, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is only if it's definitely happening.
In which case, he might allow that to sell to a set amount.
Set amount at the beginning, right? Should the borrower need more money and be forced to sell the pledged property, and the offers to give him additional money to acquire the property outright? Total of the loan and the additional payment is still less than the property's true market value. Okay, yeah. There's a discussion here if he's adding money, but I didn't add that in. But they're saying that he's adding money. He would add money to purchase the house, but it still won't be the amount of the value.
So it's still ribis.
It would be rich. It would be ribis. Okay.
That's the
I don't know
idea.
if that matters because it could have been even without the collateral. Okay. Now we're holding back in the Mishnah. No. Is this the Mishnah? Still not the Mishnah. Machalei bias.
You're saying that collateral is always used like that to extort money from people. Like that's a classic way. You always take collateral for the exact amount of the loan, or do you always take it for more, hoping the guy will default so you can go out?
How do they do it today?
Usually the collateral is more, so it's always ribis then. He ends up collecting. The borrower is always
that we're going to see.
Yeah. Like, can I borrow your pencil?
That we'll see in a moment.
You lost your pencil.
Example, the whole license. There's places that don't do anything or that is hold your license. It's a headache to get another one.
Okay. Machalei bias, machalei sada. If he sells him a house or he sells him a field, and the seller tells to the purchaser, he says, it's very interesting. He says, this would look like someone is pawning a pawn shop. You sell it, but you don't really want to sell it. You're selling because you need the money. You tell the person that if I get the money, I'm going to go and buy it back. I come with the money, I want it back. So he says that's usher. Yeah. He says it's usher. The reason why it's usher is because the seller, that could be. That's the sugi is coming up on the next page. But the problem over here is that the purchaser is going to eat the fruits, of course, because he just purchased it. Now, what's really happening is the purchaser is lending money to the seller. The seller is going to come up with money and pay it back, and the fruits ended up with the lender. which is interest. I mean, if it's a clear-cut sale, then that would be a sale. But it's not a clear. It's because it's like this. I want you to give it back to me. It turns into like a loan. Right.
So if the person sells it, he doesn't have the right to get it back.
Yeah. So because over here he's asking for the rights to get it back, so it's a loan. It's not a sale.
The loan is fine, it's just the witness.
Yeah, but the problem is when he does this sort of sale, which is really a loan, the purchaser is eating the fruits, living in the house, and doing all that. That's where the interest is.
But pawn shop is usually like, I have a guitar, right? Give it to him. He doesn't play the guitar while he has it. Where the fruits in this, he just hopes that he'll default on the loan and he'll sell the guitar for much more than the loan.
Right? There could be cases where you don't have interest, but there could be cases where there is interest, where he gets to use the car while or whatever.
So they charge you real interest. They say, "Oh, you want it back? You pay me 10% a month or whatever it is." No, it's real interest.
That's ribbis. How can a Jew be a pawn shop owner?
Sounds like a problem. Someone in one of the Art Scroll biographies, they were, they write about these Gedolim, whatever. So one of them, they were walking by, him and his daughter, his family, walking by a pawn shop. One of them was looking inside the window at some items there. He said, "We don't look inside. We don't take any enjoyment from people that went through a difficult time and had to. Should not be looking." Yeah, interesting. Okay, the Gemara now says, but let's say he says, let's say the purchaser said to the seller, when you get money, I'll sell it back to you. Not when I get money, I would like to get it back. That's the seller saying that I don't really want to sell this. I'm just giving it to you now. You'll give it back to me when I get the money. But here the purchaser is telling to the seller that when you get the money, I'll give it back to you. So that's allowed. The Gemara's on that. The Gemara is going to say it doesn't really mean it.
Doesn't mean it.
It doesn't mean it. The sale's final. It is saying, like they tell you, like, oh yeah, you're not going to have any trouble with this. It's going to be fine, And then it's like, oh, but you told me I'm not going to have trouble. Is it? Does it say it in the contract? Not in the contract. Whatever. Okay. Montana, who's the author of this? We know what's coming up already. Amar Avuna Beit Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Yehuda, it's not Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Metzia Daf ribbis mutter, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, it would need to be definite that it's ribbis. And the person said over here that if you ever want to sell, then sell it to me. Then I'm sorry that if I come up with the money, then I'm going to buy it back. So who says he's going to come up with the money? Maybe it's never going to be a case of interest. Okay. Maishna Reisha, Maishna Seifa. What's the difference between the first case where where the meicher, the seller says, I would like to purchase it back, or if the purchaser says, if you ever want, you could purchase it back. Amarava, skip the parentheses. Seifa Damalei Midaite. The last case is telling you he doesn't really say, I'll sell it back. He says, if I want, maybe I'll sell it back. Yeah.
If you ever want, that's the second.
Yeah. If you want, and you come up with the money, I may want and sell it back to you.
But he's probably hoping for another customer to come by and buy it.
He's non-committal. Okay. Who Gavra, that's why that would be permissible, because this is a real sale. You've never really committed that the person will always be able to buy it back. It's not a loan. The sale is final. Who Gavra, there was a person that sold the field to his friend, and he didn't take he didn't guarantee, title insurance. It says, someone may show up and take it away from you, and I'm not taking any responsibility for that. Like an auction. Well, well, the seller sees the purchaser Reuven sees Shimon, he's looking very, very depressed, nervous about this. Amalei, so Reuven tells to Shimon, Amayatzivas, what are you so sad about? If anyone ever takes it away from you, I'll give you the best, the fruits, and I'll pay you back, whatever, if anyone ever comes. Now, he didn't put it in the document. And he didn't put it in the document clearly, not just he didn't put it in because there was an opinion that says if you leave the guarantee out of the document, it's just a mistake. It's really supposed to be there anyway. But he says that no, I'll I'll take it. I'll give it to you afterwards. If someone takes away this field, I'll give you something else. Good stuff. Amar Meimar says, Pitumi mili balmahu. He's just Pitumi sounds like he's just fattening him up. How do they translate it over there? Words of comfort. Words of comfort. He's just telling him, don't worry about it. But that's not there's no guarantee on that. Fattening words. Okay. Amalei Rav Ashi la Meimar.
Say buttering them up.
Yeah. Yeah. The butter is the fat. Yep. Amalei Rav Ashi la Meimar. This was not a Meimar that was saying this. Oh yeah, it was. A Meimar said that these words are just buttering him up. Rav Ashi says to Meimar, Taimamai, what's the reason? Given the lekech boyelasnoi v'chamecher kamasni amrit betumi mili balmo. What you're saying is that since this was not made as a real stipulation, the way the seller would make it. Seller, I'm selling this to you on condition that. Who's saying this? The purchaser is saying this. And the purchaser. One second. Oh, the purchaser should have made the condition that I'm only buying this. I'm only buying this if you're going to guarantee that you're going to if anything comes up, that you're going to replace it. But here, the seller is the one that's telling it to him. So we say, oh, the seller's saying it. Oh, you can't trust the seller. That's between Mila Balmo. Problem is, but if you look at the Mishnah, it says, the Kashil Chamais Achsala. Mishnah or the Brisa? Brisa. The Brisa said that if someone sells a house to his friend and the seller says that if I ever come up with the money, then return it to me, that was prohibited. That was interest. But the purchaser says to the seller that if you ever come up with money, then we said that that's permissible. Now, because that should have been something that the seller that should have been a stipulation that the seller should have made. But the seller didn't make that stipulation. And the purchaser made the stipulation. And so to explain that distinction between if it was the seller that made the stipulation or the purchaser, Rava explained that the Seifa was a different case. Why was that permissible? That's because he said, if I'm so inclined, I'll end up, I'll give it back to you. Right? If you come up with the money and I want, then I'll let you purchase it back. But according to the way Rav explained it, it's only because the person said that it's only if I'm interested, I'll do that. And that's why we said that was permissible, because it's not considered a loan, it's a real sale. He didn't commit him, it was non-committal. But if he doesn't say that I would sell it back to you if I'm so interested, but it says like automatically I'll definitely sell it back to you, then even though the wrong person is making the stipulation, but it's still going to be valid unless he says that I'm not committing. So it's not when what you understood from Rava before that says that he's non-committal. That doesn't mean that he said I'm non-committal. that means that we interpreted what he's saying as non-committal. So as long as the wrong person says it, we say that it's non-committal. That's how we're answering this up. Okay. It was the person that didn't have to make that stipulation. Okay, because of Lagita the Bisu. There was a person on his deathbed, a deathly ill person. He wrote a divorce for his wife, and the reason why he's writing a divorce is so that she doesn't have to marry his younger brother. The Ibam complication. So, Ingid Vatnach, he's groaning and moaning. How do they translate that?
Why do you sigh?
He's sighing. Amrale, he says to her, Amrale, she says to him, Amai kamatnach, why are you sighing? Ikaimus, if you survive, Didachana, I'll be yours, which means I'll marry you back. She's not a Kohen. But meanwhile, he's giving her a divorce. And then she's committing that so it looks like it's a divorce on a condition. The divorce, there's a condition here that if
says if you recover,
the divorce is up. And if he passes away, then the divorce is valid. You can make a condition like that. No, the Kohen would be a problem. Won't be able to. No, but here we're not really. It's not a full stipulation. It's not a full stipulation. So,
if she refuses, he survives.
And then she refuses. So
that's exactly. I've had enough of this.
Amar Rav Zvid. I was thinking like, who poisoned you? No, I'm kidding. Amar Rav Zvid. Rav Zvid said, "Pitumi mili ba'almo." She doesn't really mean that she's going to marry him back. She's just trying to comfort him so that he should, I guess, die in peace. Encourage him to grant the divorce, right? Amalei Ravach midifle Ravina. Bilavt mitume mili mai. And if it wasn't just fattening words, then what would you say? What do you think? She makes conditions in the get. He's giving her a get, and she's saying that there's going to be a condition here. He's the one that makes the condition. The husband does the whole divorce. She just receives it.
But in the other example, the buyer was allowed to. The seller couldn't say, "Oh, the buyer could say, "Oh,
I think the one.
But there also we said that the seller wants the rights to buy it back. He was the one that was supposed to make the stipulation. He didn't. Because the buyer did it, we said that it was non-committal. We said it was less of a stipulation. Yeah. The seller should have made the stipulation that if I come up with the money, I'd like to buy it back. Over here, the husband that's giving the get should be the one that's making the stipulation, saying that if I survive, then I want to marry you back.
She could refuse. If you want, I want to marry you back, but
right.
I'm sorry,
I didn't get rid of you. But I understood the whole seller situation. If he sold the property, if he doesn't have the authority to buy it. But since the buyer said, "Oh, I'll send it back to you," he was.
Oh, that was acceptable to say that, but it doesn't mean that it actually is. The reason why it's acceptable is because it's non-committal. He doesn't actually have to follow through. That's why it was acceptable. Okay. Mahu Detema, the Gemara says, I could have thought like this. He's the one that makes the conditions in the divorce. Mahu Detema, he gufa, who gufa daita didaka gomer v'yav kita. Could have thought that maybe he gives the divorce with her words in mind. That she, this is what they were talking about. So he's giving the divorce based on what she's saying, that she would marry him back. And Kamash Malan, it comes to teach us that it's not so. That he gives a divorce that's his divorce. What she's saying is not necessarily part of his giving the divorce. Yeah, the Gemara is throwing in here that there's a stipulation that he's not accepting. But really, it's not really a stipulation. Really, this is a regular divorce, and once they're divorced, then she has the rights to refuse getting married. Okay, now we go back to the Mishnah. The second case of the Mishnah was Halveo al Sadeo, where he lends money and he says that if you're going to give me money, if you're going to give me the repayment of the loan, then good. But if you don't, then I'm going to keep the field. So Amar Rav Huna says, B'shas matan mois kana hakol. If at the time that he lent the money, this was a stipulation, then he acquires the whole field. But lachar matan mois, but if it's after the loan, after he already gave the money, then like kanel keneged moisav, then he would only acquire the amount of the field that was corresponding to the amount that was owed. Rav Nachman says, even if he makes a stipulation after the money was lent, he can still acquire everything, the entire field. Interesting. Why would Rav Nachman say that? I mean, maybe the other person doesn't agree. Is the other person agreeing to it? It sounds like the field has a higher value than the actual loan, no? That's what it sounds like. The field has a higher value. So Abed Rav Nachman of the Gabi Reish Galusa Kishmaiti. Rav Nachman actually paskin like this for the Reish Galusa, the way that he holds that they made a stipulation like this after the loan, and Rav Nachman took the field. They took the field. The Reish Galusa took the field because they lent money, they didn't pay back in the stipulated time, and so he took the field.
And it was worth the exact amount.
I think it was worth more.
That's with us.
Yeah. Yeah. Any notes on that? How was he able to do that if the value was higher?
If I stay in business, unless it gets higher.
Whatever the case happened, whatever the case is, Kar Rav Yehuda l'shtari, when that document that the person had that he was able to take the field because the person stipulated with him that if you don't pay back, you get to take the field. So Rav Yehuda tore up the document. Amalei Reish Galusa, the Reish Galusa says to Rav Nachman, Rav Yehuda Kar l'shtarcha. Rav Yehuda tore up your document. You came to court, you made a document. Rav Yehuda walked in an hour later and tore it up. Says, oh, we don't do this. Amalei, so Rav Nachman says, Dardaka Kara. Was it a apple?
Seems like the radio producer has special privileges.
Yeah. Looks like a governor. So he says, well, you think that's a child? It was Rav Yehuda Gavra Rabakari. It was a great person that tore it up. This Rav Nachman talking about Rav Yehuda. Chazar Beitam Rabakari must have seen a reason why it's invalid and he tore it up. Ikadami, some say that the story happened a little different. Amalei says, Dardika Kari, this was a child that tore it up. The Kuli Amal Gabi Dibidina Dardikin, and everyone in front of me is considered a child.
The dog tears it up.
Right. Other Rav Nachman, however, Rav Nachman retracted. He says, "Afilu b'shas matan mois like kind of like loan." Even if the stipulation was made at the time of the loan, it's still nothing. Esvi Rav Nachman, Rav asked Rav Nachman, "What are you saying? A person can't make this stipulation." We have in our Mishnah it says, If you don't repay me from now to 3 years, then the property is mine. The property is his. Nachman says that it's not. It doesn't work. Amalei, and that the Mishnah says it does work. Amalei. So Rav Nachman responded to Rava, Ani Emer Smachta Kanya, Menyumi Emer Smachta Like Kanya. Like you mentioned before. Rav Nachman says, I always said that Asmachta is like a gamble. If you don't pay me, then I'm going to take this. Let's say that that's an invalid statement. The person was only agreeing to that because he's hoping to pay back. But he never would have agreed to it had he known that he's not going to end up paying back. So I always said that asmachta kanya, that it is valid. Menyumi says that asmachta is not kanya. It's invalid. And therefore, once Menyumi said that, then I retracted and I changed my mind. And Rav Nachman says, now I hold like Menyumi. So that's why Rav Nachman retracted. And he says that even if at the time of the loan, he says that if you don't pay back by 50 years, so the field's going to be mine. The field is not his. What does Menyumi do with the Mishnah? The Mishnah says that the field is his. If you want to say that the Mishnah is following the other opinion of Rabbi Yossi, we know that there's a machlekes tanaim. So he says, yeah, sure, you're quoting me a Mishnah. We just don't hold like that Mishnah. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. I think Rabbi Yehuda was that argued with him. He says, asmachta kanya, that a gamble is considered a good acquisition. Or else we can say that he said over there it wasn't a gamble. That case is where he says acquire it from now. So that's already a more serious statement, and it's not considered a gamble. He says, not if you don't pay me, then I'm going to take the field. But
not if you don't.
He's not saying that. He's not saying if you don't pay me. He's saying that I'm acquiring the field now. If you don't pay me, I'm retroactively acquiring the field. He's just saying that. He's not just saying that I'll acquire it when at the end of the time when you don't pay me. Rather, I'm acquiring it retroactively. That turns into a sale. Right.
Yeah, that's the difference. Okay.
Yeah, this is more than a foreclosure. This is saying that the money that I lent you back then is going to be purchasing money for this property. The thing is, it sounded before that the property was not was a higher value than the loan. And how is he allowed to do this? Yeah, but that's, we said, we made a distinction before that if he makes the stipulation at the time of the loan, then he gets the full property. Their agreement is binding is not considered an asmachta. Rav Huna is of the opinion that generally an asmachta is not binding. Nevertheless, he holds that when the promise to forfeit the field is given at the time of loan, it is binding. Rav Huna's opinion, a promise given at the time of loan is to be taken in all sincerity, since the borrower benefits from the lender's benevolence. He gives the lender the field as a pledge at the time of the loan. Assuming he is sincerely prepared to forfeit if he defaults. Therefore, even though the borrower expected to pay the loan on time, the agreement is binding. He's not telling me about the interest though. Yeah, maybe to resolve this, maybe the Gemara is not discussing the interest, the violation. Maybe the Gemara is just discussing the asmachta aspect. Is it considered binding or is it not binding? if someone makes an agreement with interest, it's a real agreement. It's binding. It's just you're not allowed to do that. Maybe the Gemara is just discussing is it binding or not?
Would it be similar?
By a vow, if someone vows something that he's not allowed to do, so
Something that he already vowed that
Right.
he was going to do a month.
right. What happens if someone borrows money on interest? And what happens? Borrows money on interest. Is it there's a contract? What does he owe? What does he owe him? Does he owe him the interest, or does Torah? Does he owe him the interest, and as he pays him back, and he pays him back his legal obligation? Is he violating a rule in the Torah, but he still owes it?
The violation of Torah was even silent. Getting into
Right.
such thing.
Right. What happens?
I guess maybe it's allowed, like if it's like a Gentile bag.
Yeah,
So
the
then a
Gentile
Jew-
would not.
But a Jew is not allowed.
So I'm asking: does he owe it to him, but he's not allowed to pay it, or does he not even owe it? That's
Yeah.
prohibition. Okay.
The answer is who's paying.
Right.
I don't know about it, but they're like pretty sure that people don't care about Torah. I don't think they care about Torah.
I heard in the Bank Yomi there's a big sign on the wall, Heteriska. Anyway, I never used Bank Yomi. Amalei Mar Yinuka Mar Kshisha Bnei Rav Chisda Rav Ashi. These two sons of Rav Chisda, the older son and the younger son. Now there's a machlekes, which one is older? If older may actually be younger, and younger may actually be older. The reason why they gave him that name. What was
You buying old flats?
it? Sort of, but not exactly. The reason why they gave him the name Old Son is because he was born when Rav Chisda was old, which makes him younger, and the young son was born when Rav Chisda was young, which makes him older. Okay, whatever the case is, they say to Rav Ashi, Achi Amri Nardai, this is what they said in Nardai, Mishmid Rav Nachman, in the name of Rav Nachman. Hi Asmachta. This, how do they translate Asmachta? Asmachta? That's how they translate it over there. Asmachta, this is a type of gamble. Bismane Kanya. That means if it's, the Gemara doesn't understand it yet, and we're going to ask a question on it, but we're thinking right now that if the time came to repay, and he didn't repay, okay, then the person gets the property. But before the time to repay comes, then like Kanya, he doesn't acquire the property. Malay, he says, 1 second. Call me the bismani kani blaze money like kani. Everything is like that. Before the time you don't acquire, after the time you do acquire. What are you telling me about an asmachta? Maybe what you meant to say was something else. This is the sons of Rav Chisda telling Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi is correcting them. He says, maybe what you meant to say is, let's say the lender appears, shows up to the borrower, and it's not time to repay yet. The borrower says, just take the field. Yeah, I don't have the patience to repay, just take the field. Kani, so he acquires it. But Basar's money, but if he comes at the last day, or at the end, and he wants to collect, Ramalei Kani, and he says, take it, then like honey, and he doesn't acquire it. In my time, what's the reason for that? It's because he's ashamed that he doesn't have the money. He doesn't really mean to give him the field. He doesn't know what to say. So he says, take the field. But it's not because he's actually agreeing to that deal. But it's not so. I feel the guy's money because even during the time Nami Laikani, he also doesn't acquire it, saying because Asmachta, this was all a gamble. Because so why do you tell him acquire just acquire the field? Because I don't want him to bother me in 2 months when he's going to show up. I said just take the field, really postponing my payment, but I'm not actually agreeing for him to take the field, even though that's what I said. That's Rav Ashi explaining this. So Rav Ashi explained that it's because of embarrassment, and then he actually argues on it. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa says, Hayasmachta, this gamble, Zimnin Kanya, Zimnin like Kanya. Sometimes it's valid, sometimes it's not valid. Ashkechei the Kashasi Shechra. If at the time to repay the loan, the lender shows up, he sees that the borrower is drinking beer. He says Kanya. So that means he's not repaying the loan. He's just he gave up on this, right? What is it?
Going through our favorite theories.
Oh. Samuel Smith. So then he acquires it. But if he's but if he has if you see that he's looking for money, it would mean he's selling his things and there's a yard sale outside or something. So then, like honey, then we see that he doesn't want the person to take the field, and it's not considered valid. It's not a kinyan. I guess we're going along with the logic that asmachta leikanya, unless we know that it's more than just an asmachta. How do you know that the reason why he's drinking wine is because he gave up a repayment? Maybe he's just trying to relax his fear, huh? Dispel his anxiety of having to, to have to go collect money now. Maybe someone else is promised him money, and that's why he's not worried. How do you know that just because he's drinking wine means that he's not repaying it? Elam Ravina says he kapit bedami. If we see that he's not selling anything for less than its value, so when someone needs money, he has to take a loss in order to sell his items. He has items to sell. He would sell because he needs the money. So
Yeah.
what's it called? What are those sales called? Short sale. Short sale. Clearance, right? Well, clearance doesn't tell me that, but the short sale means that they're trying to get the money. So if the person is not doing a short sale, then then that means that he's not repaying the loan. You see, he's not looking for money. He still has his prices are high on everything. How do you know that's the case? Maybe the reason why he doesn't want to do a short sale is because he doesn't want all his properties to go down. Once people hear that you need money, so then they bargain you down, and so he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to let anyone know that he's doing a short sale. Rav Papa says he kapit ba'ara. If they help me translate this, vadekani. He doesn't. If he's not selling any properties less than their value, then obviously he's not taking care of. He's not trying to repay the loan, and therefore the lender can take the property. Okay. Rav Papa also says, even though the rabbi said that this gamble is not considered an acquisition, it's not binding, but you can still use that field as collection. Up to the Nazmanio, right? Rav Huna, the son of Rav Nassan, says to Rav Papa, but did the person ever say that you can use this as a collection, acquire it to collect from it? Amalei Masutra, Breder of Marila Ravina, Yamakani Magavina Kani. What do you think? If he did say that you can use this to collect, that's going to be good? Safe, asmachti. This is still an asmachta. It's still the gamble type of language. Asmachta lekanya, we know that asmachta doesn't work. Allah poitke the camera of Papa Mais. What did Rav Papa mean when he said that it was a apotheke? What was the word that they told Daniel told us? Apotheke? No, but there was supposed to be an English word or something. Apotheke. Damalei, what did Rav Papa mean? Damalei lo yelach haprayin el mizu, that this is where you should take the collection. Really? What did we gain from this answer that we didn't have before? Let me see. Even within the 2 years. When Rav Papa said that even though an asmachta is not binding,
right,
the field is considered a mortgage property, even though it's not binding, the field is considered mortgage property, he was referring to an agreement consisting of 2 clauses, an ordinary mortgage and a penalty. The mortgage clause stipulated that he would be allowed to offer only this particular property as payment for his loan. In that case, he would give the lender a portion of the property corresponding to the value of the loan.
right.
The penalty clause stipulated that if he neglected to discharge the debt within 3 years, the entire property would become the lender's.
Wow.
The Papa ruled that although the penalty clause is void since it's an asmachta, the mortgage clause is valid. The inefficacy of one part of the agreement does not render the other part ineffective. Okay. Where are we holding? Who Gavra? There was a person. He sold a field to his friend with a guarantee. Amalei tells him, if people ever come and take the field away from you, you can collect from me no, this is the purchaser telling to the seller, right? I'm going to take the best of the best that you have.
Whoa.
So Amalei, the seller tells back to the purchaser, no, you can't take my very best. That I'm holding for myself. But I'll give you some other good stuff. Turns out that they actually took it from him. And then, with his luck, a flood came and destroyed the very best field that he had. Remember, he told him, I'll give you the second best. He told him I'll give him the second best, and the second best is still around. He wants to go take the second best. When I told you that I'm going to give you the second best, that's because I had the first best. But now my second best is now my first best.
Yeah.
And I told you I'm not giving you my first best, and this is the new first best. Okay. But it seems like it ends over there with that comment. Then it may have to go down. A lower, a
No, it
lower.
says here, the seller must give it to him according to his promise. Seller has to turn over second best.
Which statement is that? Who's saying that? Rav
Yeah.
Papa?
Oh, yeah, Rav Papa
Okay.
said.
But now Rav Achim Midifta Ravina rejects that.
My commentary says it's not over harmonic, it's keep the second best.
That's the concept.
I mean, in the halacha.
23.
Yeah, but that's Rav Papa's statement. Rav Achim Midifta Ravina says that no.
And it says that absence of now keep moving forward.
Is that on the words of Rav Papa, or is that on the words of Rav Acha? Therefore, now the best of us agreement is void. Yes, but give himself the ordinary best. Yes, so it's minimum call. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you're saying if there was no specific agreement, then he takes the medium quality. This was an agreement. Rav Bar Shva have a massive of Kana Zuzi. Rav Bar Shva had lent Rav Kana money. So Rav Kana owes Rav. You have the opposite? Owed. Oh, Masa means owed. Okay, thank you. Amalei, he says to me, like Paranalachli and Pliny, Gavi Mehai Chamra. If I don't pay you by such and such a day, you can take from this. What do you have? Wine or donkey? Wine. Everyone says wine. No, really? This is wine. Savara Papa Lameimar, Papa thought to say, Ki Amrina Nasmachta Kanya. When do I say that a gamble is not kind of that's a smachta is not binding. That's hanimili ba'ara. That's referring to land. The lavlis vunikaima, because people don't like to sell land. Aval chamra, but wine kimulis vunikai kazuzidami. That's just regular. That's like money, liquid money. That's what people sell. Amalei Rav Huna Breid Rav Yishua Rav Papa, but Rav Huna Breid Rav Yishua says to his friend Rav Papa, he says Achem Minu Shmei Rabba. But in the name of Rabba, we said Kol De'i Laikani. Whenever you say De'i, you say that if such and such happens, then this and this will be the result. That is not binding, because that is an asmachta. You're hoping that doesn't happen, and you're not really agreeing to that. Right. I'm Rav Nachman. Hashta the Marabana Smachta Lekanya Hadar Arava the Peri. Now that the rabbis have said that asmachta is not binding, so therefore you have to return the land that was confiscated, that was taken. You also have to return the fruits that you ate during that time. This is what you mean to say that when the person gave him that land, he when he took the land and the fruits were eaten, so he forgave him for the fruits because the person thought that that this was going to be a binding deal. The problem is, if someone sells the fruits of a palm tree to his friend, until they grow, until they come into the world, so then he can retract from that sale. Once they're in the world, he can't retract. Rav Nachman says, you can always retract from it, even after they come. Why? Because when you sold it, it was before the sale was not valid, because you bought it, you sold it before it was in the world. Rav Nachman says, Medina, I'd agree, that if the person grabbed it and ate it, so we don't take it away from him. even though we can retract for any future sale, but whatever he took is already is good. So we see that Rav Nachman holds that if there was a forgiveness, if he forgave him, even though he didn't have to forgive him, because he could have said, I'm claiming it, but he didn't realize that, and he forgave him anyway. So we see that it's considered forgiven. And now you're telling me over here that you have to return the fruits. Umar says, over there, it was a sale. And by a sale, we say that it's considered mechila. But over here, it's a loan, and the loan has to be, when it's a loan, then we have to return the fruits because it looks like interest. Okay, let's leave it over here.
Oh.
I'm a Rav at the last 2 words.